What happens when kindness is met with cruelty? On Odyssey Airlines Flight 112, floating 30,000 feet above the Atlantic, one flight attendant decides she is the sole judge of who deserves respect. For Arthur and Eleanor Vance, an elderly black couple in premium economy, her judgment is swift and harsh. She denies them water. She mocks their requests. She treats them as less than human, all while fawning over the wealthy in the next row. But she's made a fatal career mistake. She thinks they're just two quiet, insignificant passengers. She has no idea she's sneering at the very people who founded the airline, and her day of reckoning is just hours away. The sterile, humming energy of JFK's Terminal 4 was a familiar chaos. Odyssey Airlines Flight OA-112 to London Heathrow was in its final boarding stages, a gleaming Airbus A350 waiting patiently at gate B26. The line was a mix of families bright with vacation energy, road warrior consultants with weary eyes, and students clutching passports like golden tickets. Among them, blending seamlessly into the anonymous river of travelers, were Arthur and Eleanor Vance. To the untrained eye, they were just another elderly couple. Arthur, at 82, was tall and lean, his dark skin marked by the lines of a life filled with both laughter and intense focus. He wore a simple, well-pressed tweed blazer over a polo shirt. Eleanor, a year his junior, was the picture of quiet dignity, her silver-grey hair pulled back in an elegant twist. She wore a comfortable cashmere travel set, her only jewelry, a simple gold wedding band, and a string of pearls. They held their premium economy boarding passes, waiting their turn in Zone 3 with the patience of people who have seen it all. They were, in fact, the two people on Earth who had seen this specific airline grow from a single, audacious idea sketched on a diner napkin in 1974 into the global giant it was today. They were the Vance in Vance Odyssey Global, the holding company. They were billionaires 10 times over, and they were flying completely incognito. As they stepped onto the jet bridge, Arthur squeezed his wife's hand. "Well, my love," he murmured, his voice a low, smooth baritone. "Let's see if the ship is still sailing true." "It's been a while since we've done this, Artie," Eleanor replied, her smile soft. "I hope David is wrong. The reports, they've been so clinical." Their son, David Vance, the acting CEO, had been worried by a recent slip in customer satisfaction scores. Not in first class, that was easy. The problems were in coach and premium economy, reports of callous service and crew indifference. Arthur and Eleanor had a simple philosophy. You don't know the state of your house by sitting in the parlor. You go check the foundations. They found their seats, 12B and 12C, in the small, curtained-off premium economy cabin. It was comfortable, with extra legroom and wider seats. As they settled, a flight attendant entered the cabin, pulling the curtain shut with a sharp zip. This was Serena Jenkins. Serena was, by all appearances, the perfect flight attendant. Her dark blonde hair was pulled into a flawless, shellacked bun. Her Odyssey uniform, a deep navy blue with a smart red trim, was impeccably tailored. Her makeup was a mask of professional hospitality. But her eyes were cold. They were assessing. Serena scanned her cabin. She had been with Odyssey for 12 years and felt her seniority entitled her to better routes than the New York to London slog, as she called it. She was angling for the ultra-long-haul first-class routes to Singapore or Dubai, where the tips were bigger and the passengers, in her opinion, mattered. Her gaze passed over Arthur and Eleanor without a flicker of recognition. She saw, old, black, and not in first class. In her internal, hierarchical ledger, they were filed under no effort required. She moved to the row in front of them, 11A, where a man in a visibly expensive and intentionally loud Brioni suit was already complaining about the Wi-Fi speed before they'd even pushed back. "Mr. Henderson, so good to see you again," Serena cooed, her voice instantly transforming into a warm, syrupy contralto. She'd looked him up on the manifest, a hedge fund manager. This was a passenger worth her time. "Can I get you a glass of champagne? We have the Bollinger. It's so much better than what they're serving back in coach." "Make it quick," Henderson grunted, not looking up from his phone. "Of course." As she turned to the galley, Eleanor Vance pressed her call button. The small blue light above her seat illuminated. She just wanted a small bottle of water for Arthur, who needed to take a heart rate medication before takeoff. Serena saw the light. She looked directly at it. Then, with a practiced slowness, she turned her back and busied herself polishing a champagne flute. Liam Costello, a young flight attendant on only his third transatlantic flight, saw the exchange from the galley. He was nervous, eager to please, and deeply intimidated by Serena, who was the lead attendant for their section. "Serena," he whispered. 12C rang. "I see it, Liam," she snapped, not whispering. "It's called boarding. They can wait. Go do your pre-departure cross-check." Liam flinched and hurried away. After 5 minutes, with the champagne delivered to Mr. Henderson and a second glass for herself, consumed discreetly in the galley, Serena finally sauntered over to row 12. The call light was still on. "Yes?" Her voice was flat, the warmth from moments before completely gone. "Pardon me, miss," Eleanor said, her voice unfailingly polite. "My husband just needs a small bottle of water, if it's not too much trouble." Serena let out a long, put-upon sigh. She glanced at Arthur, who was simply observing her, his expression neutral. "Ma'am, we are in the middle of boarding," she said, as if explaining a complex rule to a child. "Pre-departure beverages are for first class. You will get water during the main beverage service after we reach cruising altitude. Please turn off your light." She didn't wait for a reply. She reached up, jabbed the call button herself, and walked away. Arthur and Eleanor looked at each other. The blatant disrespect was so sharp, so personal, it was almost shocking. "Well," Arthur said quietly, settling back into his seat, "the foundation appears to have a crack." Eleanor simply closed her eyes. "That," she whispered, "was not indifference, Arthur. That was contempt." From the galley, Liam watched, a pit forming in his stomach. He grabbed a bottle of water and started to move, but Serena stepped in his path. "I told you," she hissed, "to do your cross-check. Are you deaf?" "They just wanted water," Liam said, his voice trembling slightly. "And I told them no. Are you going to undermine me, Mr. Costello? Your probationary period isn't over. Do you want to be on the cargo manifest next week? Do your job. My cabin. My rules." Liam, feeling ashamed, put the water bottle back and retreated to the rear of the plane. The doors closed, the safety video played, and as the A350 barreled down the runway and lifted into the night sky, Serena Jenkins sipped the last of her stolen champagne, already resenting the 7-hour flight ahead of her. In row 12, Arthur Vance dry swallowed his pill, the slight burning in his throat a dull echo of the insult they had just received. The plane leveled out at 38,000 feet, a silver needle threading its way through the darkness over the North Atlantic. The fasten seatbelt sign pinged off, and the cabin crew began their choreographed dance of meal service. In the premium economy galley, Serena was organizing the trays. "Liam," she ordered, "you and Chloe take the port side. I'll handle the starboard, and try to be efficient. I don't want to be serving this slop all night." Serena started her cart at row 11. She crouched low, bringing herself to eye level with Mr. Henderson, the hedge fund manager. "Mr. Henderson," she said, her voice a purr. "I do apologize. The filet mignon we have catered tonight is just not up to standard. I took the liberty of securing one of the first-class lobster thermidor entrees for you. I hope that's acceptable." Henderson grunted his approval. "Good. That's good, Serena." Thinking ahead. "I like that." "It's my pleasure, sir. Anything at all you need, you just let me know personally." She then moved to row 12, to Arthur and Eleanor. Her posture changed. She stood tall, looming over them, her hand placed impatiently on the cart. "Chicken or pasta?" she clipped. "Good evening," Arthur said, his tone still pleasant, testing her. "Could you tell me what the pasta dish is, please?" Serena's jaw tightened. This was a question. A delay. "It's a cheese tortellini in a basic marinara. It's airline food. Are you having it or not? I have 20 other passengers to serve." The passengers in row 13, a young couple, looked up, their eyes wide at her tone. Eleanor, sensing Arthur's rising blood pressure, intervened. "We will both have the chicken, thank you." Serena slapped 2 trays onto their tray tables, not bothering to open the foil seals. "Wine?" she asked, already moving on. "Just water, please," Arthur said. Serena grabbed 2 pre-packaged plastic cups of water and dropped them next to the trays, the water sloshing over the rims. She didn't offer a napkin. She was already at row 13, her smile back in place. "Hi, folks. How are we tonight? Chicken or the tortellini? The tortellini is actually delicious." As they ate their dry, lukewarm chicken, Eleanor leaned close to Arthur. "This isn't an isolated incident, Artie. This is a pattern. She's performing for that man in row 11 and punishing us." "It's the old class-based service model," Arthur murmured, shaking his head. "It's what we fought against. We built Odyssey on the principle that the person in 32E gets the same smile as the person in 1A. Maybe not the same champagne, but the same dignity." "She looks at us," Eleanor said, her voice hardening with a rare anger, "like we're thieves, like we stole these seats." An hour later, the cabin lights were dimmed. Most passengers were settling in, headphones on, watching movies. The cabin grew cold, the thin airline blankets barely adequate. Eleanor, who was prone to a chill, looked for a flight attendant. Serena was nowhere to be seen. She was likely in the first-class galley, networking. Eleanor pressed her call button. The blue light lit up the dim cabin. 1 minute passed. 5 minutes. 10. Liam, passing through on his way to the aft galley, saw the light. He hurried over. "Mom, is everything okay?" he asked, his voice a respectful whisper. "Oh, thank you, dear," Eleanor said, relieved. "It's just a bit cold. I was wondering if I might be able to get a second blanket." "Absolutely. Right away," Liam said. He hurried to the overhead bin where the spare blankets were kept and pulled one down. It was still in its plastic wrap. He handed it to her with a small, apologetic bow. "Thank you so much." "What is your name?" Eleanor asked, giving him a warm, genuine smile. "It's Liam, Mom. Liam Costello." "Thank you, Liam. You're very kind. We appreciate it." "It's my pleasure, truly. Can I get you or your husband anything else? A hot tea? More water?" "We're fine for now, thank you, son," Arthur said, watching the young man. Liam nodded and continued on. That small, human interaction felt like a glass of water in a desert. But it had been witnessed. From the front galley, Serena had watched the entire thing. She waited until Liam returned to the galley, then grabbed his arm and pulled him into the small space, yanking the curtain shut. "What did I tell you?" she hissed, her face inches from his. "What did I tell you about 12B and 12C? They just wanted a blanket, Serena," Liam stammered, terrified. "They had a blanket. She wanted a second one. They're nesters. They're the type who will steal the pillows and the salt shakers. I've been doing this for 12 years, kid. I know the type. You run every time they press that button. You're teaching them that they're in charge. I am in charge of this cabin." "She was just cold," Liam protested weakly. "She can wear her coat," Serena spat. "You're not here to be kind. You're here to be efficient. You made me look bad. You made it look like I was ignoring them." "You were ignoring them," Liam said, a spark of courage surprising them both. Serena's eyes went dead. She slapped the service counter with her open palm, the sound making Liam jump. "You listen to me, you probationary nothing," she whispered, her voice venomous. "You're a fly. I am the spider. You cross me again, I will write a report so damaging you won't be able to get a job cleaning toilets at LaGuardia. You will stick to your duties. You will clear trash. And you will stay away from my passengers. Am I clear?" Liam, pale and trembling, could only nod. "Yes, Serena. Clear. Good. Now go and see if Mr. Henderson wants a refill on his scotch." As Liam fled, Serena leaned against the counter, her heart pounding with adrenaline. She hated them. She hated the Vances for making her look bad, and she hated Liam for exposing her. She pulled out her digital logbook, the one all flight attendants use to note passenger incidents. She found seat 12B and 12C. She typed, "Passengers in 12B-C are becoming problematic," repeatedly pressing call bell for non-essential items, extra blankets, water outside of service. "Seem agitated and argumentative. Will monitor for disruptive behavior." She hit save. It was now in the official flight record, a permanent digital justification for what she was about to do next. The flight droned on. It was now 2 a.m., somewhere off the coast of Ireland. The cabin was dark and still, the only sound the white noise roar of the engines. Arthur Vance stirred. The dry, recycled air was getting to him, and the single tiny cup of water from 4 hours ago was long gone. He felt a familiar, dry tightness in his throat. He looked at Eleanor. She was asleep, her new blanket pulled up to her chin. He didn't want to wake her or press the call button and risk another non-response, or worse, another public humiliation. Quietly, he undid his seatbelt and stood, his joints stiff. He decided to walk the few steps back to the premium economy galley to get a cup of water himself. He pulled back the curtain and stepped into the galley. Serena was there, sitting on one of the jump seats, scrolling through her phone, her shoes off. She looked up, and her face soured, her brief moment of relaxation instantly curdling into annoyance. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice dripping with the implication that he was trespassing. "Yes, thank you," Arthur said, his voice quiet so as not to disturb the cabin. "I was just wondering if I might get a glass of water." Serena didn't move. She simply stared at him. "The cabin is dark, sir. Passengers are supposed to be seated. We're not a restaurant." Arthur was taken aback. I beg your pardon? It's just a glass of water." "And I am on my designated break," Serena lied, her phone still glowing in her hand. "We already did 2 full beverage services. You should have planned ahead." This was so far beyond a simple service breach, it entered the realm of the absurd. Arthur, a man who had negotiated billion-dollar deals and faced down hostile corporate boards, was momentarily speechless. "Miss," he said, "I am not asking for a cocktail. I am thirsty. There is a jug of water right there on the counter." He pointed to the water pitcher the crew used for refills. Serena stood up slowly, a predator cornered. She saw this as a challenge to her authority. "Sir, you are not permitted to be in the galley. It's an FAA regulation. Now please return to your seat." "That's not true," a voice said from the darkness. Mark Harrison, The lawyer from row 13 was standing right behind Arthur. He too had gotten up to stretch his legs. He was a corporate litigator from Chicago, and he had been listening to Serena's treatment of the couple all night. "That is patently false," Harrison said, stepping into the galley light. "An ambulatory passenger is absolutely permitted to request water from a galley. What's your name?" Serena's head snapped toward him. "Sir, this is a crew-only area." "I asked for your name," Harrison said, his voice calm and sharp. He pulled a small leather notebook and a pen from his jacket pocket. "I am a passenger on this flight, and I am formally requesting your name and your lead attendant ID number." Serena's eyes darted from Harrison's notebook to Arthur. She was trapped. "My name is Serena Jenkins," she said through gritted teeth. "Thank you, Ms. Jenkins," Harrison said, writing. "And I am logging that on flight OA-112 on November 7th at approximately 02:10 GMT. You refused to provide a glass of water to an elderly passenger who requested it politely. Do you care to add a comment before I finalize this note?" Serena was livid. Her face was red, her professional mask completely shattering. She saw her promotion, her Dubai route, her entire career flashing before her eyes, all because of this man and his charity case. "This passenger," she spat, pointing at Arthur, "has been a problem since boarding. He and his wife have been harassing the crew, demanding things." "That is a very serious and very slanderous accusation," Harrison said, his eyes narrowing. "I have been sitting directly behind them. The only harassment I've witnessed has been from you to them. Now, are you going to give the man his water?" Defeated and furious, Serena grabbed a plastic cup, smashed it under the water dispenser, and thrust it at Arthur. Water slopped onto his hand and the floor. "Here," she hissed. Arthur took the cup. He looked at Serena, not with anger, but with a profound, bone-deep sadness. He said nothing. He simply nodded to Mr. Harrison. "Thank you, sir. I appreciate your help." "Not a problem," Harrison said, glaring at Serena. "Some people forget what common decency means." Arthur and Harrison returned to their seats. The cabin was silent again, but the tension was a living thing. Serena, alone in the galley, was shaking with a toxic brew of humiliation and rage. She had been called out. She had been logged. She blamed them. She blamed Arthur. She blamed Eleanor. She blamed Mark Harrison. "They will pay for this," she thought, her mind twisting. "I will make the rest of this flight a living hell for them." She went back to her digital logbook. She found Mark Harrison's seat, 13D. Passenger in 13D, Mark Harrison, appears unstable, interfered with crew duties in the galley, acting in an aggressive and threatening manner towards F.A. Jenkins, appears to be allied with problematic passengers in 12BC. Maybe intoxicated. She hit save. It was a lie, a dangerous, career-ending lie. But in that moment, she felt it was her only weapon. She had just created a digital paper trail that painted her as the victim and the passengers as the aggressors. To understand the magnitude of Serena's sin, one had to understand the story of the Vances. It was 1971. Arthur Vance was a young analyst at a major logistics firm in Chicago, and Eleanor was a junior copywriter at an advertising agency. They were brilliant, ambitious, and in love. They were also, in the eyes of the world they lived in, defined by one thing. Arthur had pitched a revolutionary concept to his bosses, a hub-and-spoke cargo model for small batch shipping. He was told it was too complex and that he didn't have the big picture. A year later, a white colleague pitched the exact same idea and was promoted to vice president. That same week, Eleanor was assigned to the soulful campaign for a new brand of cigarettes and was told to use that jive talk you all are so good at. That Friday night in their tiny apartment, Arthur looked at his wife and said, "I'm done. I am done building someone else's house while they make me live in the shed. I want to build our own." He had a wild idea. He'd been a pilot in the Air Force. He loved the sky. He saw a gap in the market, underserved, regional routes in the South and Midwest that the big carriers ignored. "We'll start a charter service," he declared. "Just one plane. We'll fly where they won't, and we will treat everyone who boards that plane like a king." They cashed in their savings. They begged and borrowed. They were denied by 14 banks. The 15th, a small community bank in rural Illinois, had a loan officer who was the son of an immigrant. He saw the fire in Arthur's eyes. He gave them the loan. In 1974, Vance Charters was born. Their first plane was a leased 12-seater turboprop. Arthur flew it. Eleanor served the coffee and peanuts. Their motto painted on the side of the tiny fuselage was, "The sky is one. It belongs to everyone." They faced headwinds that would have destroyed most. Racist airport managers who would deny them landing slots. Competitors who would slash prices to starve them out. A fuel depot in Alabama that, in 1976, refused to sell them fuel, leaving them stranded on a tarmac for 8 hours. It was that incident Arthur was thinking of now, in the dark cabin of his own A350. He remembered sitting on that hot tarmac, Eleanor weeping quietly in the co-pilot's seat. He had sworn on that day, "If we ever make it, if we ever have an airline of our own, no person, passenger or crew, will ever be made to feel less than. Not on our watch." They didn't just make it. They conquered. Vance Charters became Odyssey Airlines in 1985. They bought their first 747 in 1991. They were the first major U.S. carrier to hire a black female pilot as captain. They were the first to offer profit sharing to all employees, from baggage handlers to executives. They built their corporate culture on one word: dignity. Arthur was the logistical genius, the man who could see the complex dance of 1,000 aircraft around the globe. Eleanor was the soul, the woman who designed the uniforms, who wrote the Odyssey Standard of Service, a copy of which was in Serena's luggage right now, and who insisted that their marketing always reflect the real, diverse world of their passengers. They were legends in the industry, but they were fiercely private. They let their son, David, take the spotlight as CEO. They preferred the quiet work, the philanthropy, and the occasional mystery shopper flight. And now, on this flight, Arthur Vance sat in the dark, sipping the water he'd had to fight for, and he realized the truth. The battle he thought he'd won 40 years ago was still raging. The enemy wasn't a rival airline. It was the insidious rot of human cruelty, and it was wearing his uniform. Meanwhile, Serena Jenkins had her own, very different backstory. She hadn't joined Odyssey for the culture. She'd joined for the flight benefits. She saw the job as a stepping stone to a life of glamour she felt she deserved. She'd grown up in a working-class family, always on the outside looking in. The Odyssey uniform was her armor. It gave her power over people. For her, passengers were not people. They were a hierarchy. At the top were the first-class elites, the celebrities, the Hendersons. They were her goal. She served them to be seen by them, to be validated, to hopefully, in her wilder fantasies, be offered a job by one of them. At the bottom were the coach passengers, the families with screaming kids, the non-English speakers, and the elderly. They were obstacles. They were work. And the Vances? They were the worst of both worlds. They were sitting in her cabin, a cabin she considered almost first class, but they had the audacity to be old, quiet, and unimpressive. They were a stain on her perfect, curated environment. and by defying her, they had just declared war. The tension in the cabin was thick for the next 2 hours. Serena actively avoided row 12 and 13, delegating all service to Liam, who looked miserable and exhausted. Then, at 4:15 a.m., just as they were crossing the Irish coast, a different call button chimed. This one was frantic, from the front of the plane. A passenger in first class, seat 2A, was in distress. A moment later, the intercom crackled. "Is there a doctor on board? We have a medical emergency in seat 2A, first class." A doctor from the main cabin hurried forward. Serena, her personal feud forgotten, rushed to the front. This was a real emergency. The cabin lights came up to a dim glow. Passengers stirred, woken by the commotion. Eleanor grabbed Arthur's arm. "Oh, goodness, I hope they're all right." But just as the crew converged on first class, a second crisis erupted. In seat 13D, Mark Harrison, the lawyer, let out a sharp, choked gasp. He clutched his chest, his face instantly ashen. His notebook and pen clattered to the floor. He's not breathing right," his wife screamed, shaking him. "Mark! Mark!" The cabin was thrown into pure chaos. A dual medical emergency. The crew was now split. Serena was in first. Liam was frozen in the galley. "Heart attack!" someone shouted. "He's having a heart attack!" Liam, seeing his lead attendant in the other cabin, panicked. He fumbled for the intercom. We need the doctor back here. We have another emergency." But the doctor was busy. The passenger in 2A was turning blue. "Anaphylaxis!" the doctor yelled. "He's not responding to the EpiPen. Get the kit, now!" This was the moment. The Vances had seen enough. The quiet, elderly couple vanished. In their place were 2 commanders. Arthur Vance, the man who had personally overseen the emergency protocol design for his entire fleet, unbuckled his seatbelt. His voice cut through the panic like a surgeon's scalpel. It was not loud, but it was filled with absolute, unquestionable authority. "Liam!" he called. Liam, who was hyperventilating, snapped his head up. "Mr. Costello, listen to me," Arthur said, already in the aisle. "In the aft galley, compartment M2, there is a red defibrillator pack. Get it. Now. Bring it to 13D. Go!" Liam, shocked by the command, simply obeyed. He ran. Serena, hearing the commotion, stormed back from first class. "What is going on? Sir, sit down. I told you to—" "Ms. Jenkins, you have a dual code event and you are losing control," Arthur said, his eyes like ice. "The passenger in 2A, did you check his medical alert bracelet?" "What? The doctor is—" "Check his bracelet," Eleanor Vance commanded, now standing beside her husband. "It's often a secondary allergy. I'll wager it's latex. The doctor is probably wearing latex gloves." Serena's mind couldn't process this. How could they know? Eleanor didn't wait. She pushed past the stunned flight attendant and hurried into the first-class cabin. "Doctor," she called, "are your gloves latex? Check his wrist. He may have a latex allergy." The doctor, frantic, looked at his hands, then at the patient's bracelet. "My God," he whispered. "She's right." He ripped off the gloves. The passenger in 2A, who was seconds from respiratory arrest, took a ragged, desperate gasp. His airway was opening. Meanwhile, Arthur was at 13D. Liam arrived with the AED. "Listen to me, Liam," Arthur said, ripping Harrison's shirt open. "You've trained for this. Attach the pads. Right pectoral, left rib cage. Do it." Liam's hands were shaking, but Arthur's voice was a steel girder. He attached the pads. The machine whirred. "Analyzing. Do not touch patient." "Clear!" Liam yelled, his training kicking in. "Shock advised," the machine blared. "Clear," Arthur commanded. Liam hit the orange button. Harrison's body arched off the seat. A beat of silence. Then, a gasp. His eyes fluttered. "He's back," Arthur said, placing 2 fingers on the man's carotid artery. Pulse is thready, but it's there. Liam, get the oxygen. The entire cabin, from first class to premium economy, was silent, staring at the elderly couple who had just saved 2 lives in less than 60 seconds. Serena Jenkins was standing in the aisle, her hands limp, her face white. She looked at Arthur, then at Eleanor, who was walking calmly back from first class. Who are you?" Serena whispered, her voice trembling. Arthur looked up from where he was kneeling by Harrison's seat. He was no longer the quiet passenger. He was the founder. He was the king. "You need to land this plane, Ms. Jenkins," he said, his voice cold. "Get on the satellite phone to the flight deck. Tell the captain to declare an emergency and divert to Heathrow immediately. Tell him to cite priority code, Odyssey Alpha 1. Serena's blood turned to ice. Every other attendant knew the standard codes. Pan. Mayday. But Odyssey Alpha 1 was not a pilot's code. It was a corporate code. It was known by only 3 groups of people: the Vance family, the executive board, and the head of the Flight Operations Center. It was a break glass in case of total catastrophe signal. It meant, get the CEO on the phone now. Serena's knees buckled. That's not a real code." "It is, I assure you," Arthur said. "I invented it. Now do your job." Serena stumbled, almost ran to the galley phone. Her hands were shaking so hard she could barely dial the cockpit. "Captain," she stammered, "this is lead attendant Jenkins. We have a dual medical emergency. Both passengers are stable, but I have a priority directive. We need to land. The code is Odyssey Alpha 1. A dead silence on the other end. Then the captain's voice, suddenly tight with alarm. "Understood, Ms. Jenkins. We are diverting. Heathrow, 20 minutes. Serena hung up the phone. She slid down the wall of the galley onto the jump seat. She was breathing in short, shallow gasps. It was impossible. It couldn't be. She grabbed her service tablet. She went to the company intranet. She bypassed the standard employee portal and went to the corporate history tab, a page she had never once looked at. The page loaded. At the top was a faded photograph from the 1970s, a young, smiling black couple, standing proudly in front of a tiny plane. The caption read, "Our founders, Arthur and Eleanor Vance." Serena dropped the tablet. It clattered to the floor, the screen cracking. She was going to be sick. The rest of the flight was a blur of surreal, organized calm. Arthur and Eleanor, with Liam's help, monitored the 2 patients. The captain came over the PA, his voice urgent, announcing a priority landing at Heathrow due to a medical situation. Serena Jenkins didn't emerge from the galley. She sat on the jump seat, staring at the cracked tablet, her entire life, her entire sense of self, imploding. She remembered every single moment. The skipped water, the sigh. Chicken or pasta? The lie about her break, the sneer, the false report she had filed. Oh God, the report. She had officially, in a permanent legal document, accused the founder of the airline of being a problematic passenger. This was not a mistake. This was career suicide. This was an extinction-level event. The A350 descended rapidly, its engines whining. It touched down on the tarmac at Heathrow with a gentle bump. As it taxied toward the terminal, the captain's voice came on again. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are at the gate. Paramedics will be boarding first. Please remain seated. There will also be a special operations team boarding. I repeat, all passengers and crew are to remain in their seats until instructed." Serena's heart seized. Special operations. That was for her, the Alpha 1 code. The jet bridge docked. The L1 door hissed open. First, 3 London paramedics rushed on, heading straight for Harrison and the first-class passenger, but right behind them were 4 men in immaculate dark suits. They were not smiling. They were not airport security. They radiated an aura of C-suite power. The man in the lead, a sharp, imposing man in his late 50s, with his mother's eyes and his father's commanding presence, strode onto the plane. He ignored the crew, ignored the paramedics, and walked directly into the premium economy cabin. He stopped at row 12. The passengers watched, mesmerized. The man looked at Arthur, then at Eleanor. His face was a mask of cold, controlled fury. But when he spoke, his voice broke with emotion. "Mum? Dad?" It was David Vance, the CEO of Odyssey Airlines. He knelt in the aisle, taking his mother's hand. "We got the Alpha 1 call from the cockpit. I was on a call with the London station manager. I am so sorry. Are you hurt? Are you okay?" "We are fine, David," Eleanor said, patting his cheek. "But the airline is not." "I know, Mum, I know." The entire cabin was frozen. You could hear a pin drop. The hedge fund manager, Mr. Henderson, was peering over his seat, his mouth open. He finally understood. David Vance stood up. He turned, and his gaze swept the cabin. It landed on Liam, who was frozen by the galley, holding a tray of used medical wrappers. "You," David said. "What's your name?" "Earl. Liam Costello, sir." "You assisted my parents?" I just did what Mr. Vance told me to do, sir." "Thank you, Liam. Stay right there." Then, David's eyes moved to the front galley, where Serena was trying to make herself invisible. "Miss Jenkins," he said. His voice was not loud. It was quiet. It was the sound of a blade being unsheathed. Slowly, as if walking to her own execution, Serena Jenkins emerged from the galley. Her flawless bun had a stray hair. Her makeup was streaked with tears. She looked at the floor. "Mr. Vance? Sir, I didn't know. I had no idea." David Vance took 2 steps toward her, his face a thundercloud. "You didn't know what, Ms. Jenkins?" he asked, his voice dangerously low. "That these were my parents? Or that they were elderly passengers on your flight who deserved a glass of water?" Serena flinched. The whole cabin was listening. It was a stressful flight," she stammered. I got confused." "Confused?" David thundered, his control snapping. "My mother and father founded this company on the principle of human dignity. They built it from nothing because they were sick of a world that treated them exactly the way you treated them tonight. They poured their lives into this uniform, a uniform you have disgraced." He pulled out his own phone. "I've already pulled the flight log." "Your log?" "The one where you accuse passenger 12BO of being agitated and disruptive. The one where you accuse passenger 13 Nadia, the man whose life my father just saved, of being aggressive and possibly intoxicated. You didn't just fail at your job, Miss Jenkins. You created a false narrative to cover your own cruelty. You lied." "No, please!" Serena finally broke, sobbing openly. "Please, sir, I have a mortgage. I've been here 12 years. It was a mistake. Please don't fire me." David Vance looked at her, and all the anger seemed to drain away, replaced by a cold, final judgment. "Fire you?" he said. "Oh no. Firing is too simple. You are suspended, effective immediately. You will be met by our head of London operations and airport security. They will escort you to an office where you will surrender your credentials and your logbook. We will then conduct a full investigation, during which I will personally speak to every passenger in this cabin. And when we are done, I will not only terminate your employment, I will make it my personal mission to see that your gross misconduct report is filed with the FAA. You will never serve on a major carrier again. You are done, Serena just slid to the floor, a heap of navy blue uniform and broken pride. "David," Eleanor said, her voice gentle. She walked over to Serena and looked down at the sobbing woman. "You are not a bad person, Miss Jenkins," she said, and for a moment Serena looked up with a flicker of hope. "You are just a weak one. You trade in status because you have no integrity. You see value only in a wallet, not in a person. We are not firing you because of who we are. We are firing you because of who you are, and we are just so very disappointed." That, more than anything, was the final blow. The disappointment from the woman she had tormented. As the paramedics wheeled Mark Harrison off the plane, he was conscious. He looked at Serena, then at Arthur. "Mr. Vance," he said, his voice hoarse. "Thank you. And your legal team is going to want to see my notes." Mr. Henderson, the hedge fund manager, quickly gathered his things, avoiding eye contact with everyone. He was the last one to deplane, muttering something about never flying Odyssey again. "Good," Arthur said, loud enough for him to hear. "We don't want you." The fallout from Flight OA-112 was not a quiet, internal memo. It was a seismic event that shook Odyssey Airlines to its very foundations. The Alpha 1 code had triggered a corporate cascade, and by the time the Vances had cleared customs at Heathrow, the wheels of a new, ruthless form of justice were already in motion. Serena Jenkins's descent was as swift as it was brutal. She was not simply suspended. She was met at the end of the jet bridge by Sarah Trent, Odyssey's London Heathrow head of operations, a stern, no-nonsense executive who looked at Serena with a gaze that could freeze fire. "Ms. Jenkins, this way," Sarah clipped, not even offering a hello. Two airport police officers stood a respectful but pointed distance behind her. This was not a discussion. It was an escort. Serena, her face a streaked, blotchy mask of her former professional self, was walked. Not in handcuffs, but in a way that felt just as shameful, through the bustling terminal. She was acutely aware of the other Odyssey crews staring, whispering, their eyes following her. The uniform that had been her armor, her symbol of power, now felt like a prisoner's jumpsuit. She was led to a windowless, sterile white room, deep in the administrative services wing of Terminal 5. A union representative was there, a man she had never met, who already looked defeated. He had been read the initial report from the flight deck, and knew this was unwinnable. "Serena Jenkins," Sarah Trent said, reading from a tablet in a cold monotone. "You are hereby suspended indefinitely, pending a full investigation for gross misconduct, endangerment of passengers, failure to adhere to service standards, and falsification of a flight log." "Falsification?" Serena gasped, her voice raw. "No, I was logging my perception of—" "Your credentials," Sarah interrupted, holding out her hand. "Your wings, your employee ID. Now." The act of unpinning the small silver Odyssey wings from her jacket was a physical agony. It was the moment the dream died. She had polished those wings that morning, seeing them as a symbol of her superiority. Now, as they dropped into Sarah's palm, they were just bits of metal, evidence of her failure. The investigation was not a formality as much as it was a cross-examination. The next day, after being put up in a drab airport hotel and forbidden from leaving, she was summoned to a video conference. On the screen was not some HR functionary, but David Vance himself, his eyes red-rimmed with a fury that had not cooled. "Let's review your official log, Ms. Jenkins," David said, his voice echoing in the small room. He read her words back to her, each one a nail in her coffin. "Passenger in 12BC, problematic, repeatedly pressing call bell, seem agitated and argumentative." "Agitated?" My father, Miss Jenkins, is a man who once calmly negotiated a 400-plane deal with Airbus while his appendix was bursting. But you found him agitated? He was in the galley, Serena tried, desperate. Passenger in 13D, appears unstable, aggressive and threatening, maybe intoxicated. This passenger, Mr. Mark Harrison, is a teetotaler. He is also a senior partner at one of Chicago's most powerful law firms. He was having a cardiac event, which you missed while you were, and I quote from your log, monitoring the cabin. But the most damning part, Miss Jenkins, is this entry from 22:45 GMT. He put a screenshot on the display. It was her entry about Mr. Henderson in 11A. Passenger Henderson, H, noted gold-tier flyer, proactively serviced with first-class amenities to ensure loyalty. Very pleasant. You, David said, his voice dropping to a whisper, were fawning over one passenger while slandering another. You did this on a company device. You logged your own prejudice. You documented your own cruelty. You didn't just deny water to an elderly man. You denied it to the man who wrote the service manual you ignored. You are a disgrace to the uniform my mother designed. Your union rep can have a statement, but as of this moment, your career with Odyssey is over. The call ended. The hard karma, however, had only just begun. She was fired for gross misconduct. This voided her severance. This voided her flight benefits. The FAA was formally notified of her falsification of a safety log, a cardinal sin in the industry. She was, in effect, blacklisted. She flew home to her condo in Queens, on a rival airline, in a middle seat in coach, a ticket she had to pay for. The story, leaked by a passenger, hit the Daily Mail and the New York Post within 48 hours. High-flying hate, the flight attendant who told the founder of the airline to wait his turn for water. Her photo, a smug selfie she had posted to her Instagram from a galley, was plastered everywhere. Her former colleagues, the ones she had lauded her seniority over, tore her apart in private group chats. Thank God, one wrote. She was a cancer. I saw her do that to a dozen other passengers. She tried to get another job. She applied to American, United, Delta, even JetBlue. The applications went into a digital void. The FAA filing was a permanent, invisible wall. No major carrier would touch her. Her condo payments lapsed. She was forced to sell. 9 months later, a former colleague spotted her. Not in a uniform, but in a drab, ill-fitting polo shirt. She was working at a car rental counter at the Orlando MCO airport during the graveyard shift. A very large, very loud man was screaming at her because his reserved convertible wasn't available. "What part of 'I have a reservation' don't you understand?" he bellowed. And the former colleague watched as Serena Jenkins, her eyes dead, her voice a monotone, was forced to say, "Yes, sir. I understand, sir. I do apologize. Let me see what I can do for you, sir." She had craved status so badly that she had lost all of her own, and was now forced to serve, without power and without glamour, for the rest of her life. But the Vances were not just interested in punishment. They were builders, not destroyers. They were interested in correction. The day after they returned to Chicago, Arthur Vance, against the advice of his PR team, called an emergency, all-hands meeting. Every single Odyssey employee who was not currently in the air, 20,000 people, was mandated to attend, either in person at a massive JFK hangar or via a global satellite link that grounded operations for 2 hours at a cost of millions. The mood was one of pure terror. They expected layoffs. They expected a corporate bloodbath. Instead, Arthur and Eleanor Vance, looking like the founders they were, walked onto a simple stage. Eleanor spoke first. Her voice was not angry. It was pained like a mother's. "This uniform," she said, holding up the navy blue jacket, "is not armor to hide behind. It is a symbol of trust. It means you are the guardian of the person who wears it, and the guardian of the passengers who see it. For 7 hours on Flight 112, that trust was broken." She told the story of the blanket. A young man, Liam Costello, was scared of his superior. He was threatened. And yet, he found a moment to show us a simple, human kindness. He gave me a blanket. That one act was the only thing on that entire flight that felt like the airline we built. "Kindness," she said, her voice rising, "is not a non-essential item in your service flow. It is the only item. Everything else, the chicken, the pasta, the champagne, is just cargo." Then Arthur stepped forward, and his voice was the command that had cut through the chaos on the plane. "We are not here to punish 20,000 people for the actions of one," he boomed. "We are here to remind 20,000 people of who we are. I am tired of class-based service. The person in 32E saved up for a year for that ticket. The person in 1A put it on an expense account. Who do you think is more important? They both are. The sky is one. It belongs to everyone." "The moment you judge a passenger," he said, his eyes scanning the camera, "by their clothes, their race, their age, or the seat they are sitting in, you have failed. The moment you see a passenger as an obstacle, you become the obstacle. The moment you lie to cover your own prejudice, you are no longer Odyssey. From this day forward, a new module is being added to all training. It is called the OA 112 Initiative, and it will be led by the one crew member who got it right. This led to the final, and most important, piece of the correction. Liam Costello was summoned to the corporate headquarters in Chicago. He flew first class, a ticket booked by David Vance's own assistant. He was terrified, convinced he was being fired for not standing up to Serena sooner. He walked, trembling, into the 50th floor founder's office, a glass and steel temple to aviation. Arthur, Eleanor, and David were waiting. They were not sitting behind a desk. They were standing by the window, and they were all smiling. "Mr. Costello," Eleanor said, walking over and taking both his hands. "Liam, on that flight, you were the only light in a very dark cabin." "Ma'am, Mr. Vance." "Sir, I'm so sorry," Liam stammered. "I should have done more. I should have stood up to her, but she threatened me. My probation." "You were a new employee, in an impossible situation, being bullied by a superior," Arthur interrupted, placing a hand on his shoulder. "But you know what you did? You still chose kindness. You were scared, but you were decent. Serena was powerful, and she was cruel. We cannot build an airline on calculation. We can build it on character. We can build it on your character, Liam." David Vance stepped forward. "We're taking you off the line, Liam. Effective immediately. We're promoting you to the Corporate Training and Standards Division. Your new title is Manager of In-Flight Dignity. You are going to help us design and lead the OA 112 initiative. We're not just calling it that. We're calling it the Costello Standard. Your first job is to teach 20,000 people what you knew instinctively, how to give someone a blanket and make them feel human." Liam, the young man who had just been trying to survive his probationary period, burst into tears. His rise was meteoric. He wasn't just a corporate mascot. He was a natural leader. He had the on-the-ground credibility that no executive had. He truly, deeply believed in the mission. He went on to become the youngest vice president of in-flight experience in Odyssey's history. And on his office wall, framed inexpensive mahogany, was not a photo of a plane or a high-powered executive, but a single, plastic-wrapped airline blanket. It was his reminder, and the company's new true north. Dignity is the destination. The story of Flight 112 is a powerful reminder that our true character is revealed not in how we treat our superiors, but how we treat those we think have no power. Serena Jenkins thought she was judging two insignificant passengers, but she was really just exposing her own lack of humanity. Arthur and Eleanor Vance built an empire, but they never forgot the simple dignity of a glass of water. They proved that true power isn't about arrogance, it's about integrity. What do you think? Was this karma served hot, or did Serena get what she deserved? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you love stories of karma and justice, make sure to hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to see it. And please, subscribe to the channel. We have so many more stories to tell.